There we go. Ed and I just finished up a meeting about 25 seconds ago. How's everyone doing?
Hey, Bob.
Hey.
Good, Bob. How are you?
Not bad. This is a busy Saturday. We had a meeting about radios a few minutes ago. We got DiveTribe, and then right afterwards, we're moving into a subcommittee meeting. Which, by the way, all of you guys are absolutely invited to attend. If you are a member or you're thinking about becoming a member of the subcommittee, Ed, myself, and Tom will be having our first sort of, what do you call it, town house meeting, open house meeting, town hall meeting, whatever it's called. And letting you know the vision for the subcommittee coming up in 2021 and beyond.
So how do we get on that, Bob? Is it the same link?
No, not as DiveTribe. It's a you know what I'll do? I'll have to open up another. Well, let me see here. I'll see if I can break the chat window. Chat to everyone. There you go. Wait, where's the link? That doesn't even help anything. Please download and import. Here we go. You know what? It only allows a certain amount of. This is stupid. There we go. There it is. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So yeah, you're all welcome to attend.
Thank you.
So 303 update from the dry docks. I feel terrible, and why I haven't gotten like 55 emails saying where is it still astounds me, but I have not put my newsletter out. So I'll try and get that done this week yet. I've just been busy and caught up with things. I broke my airplane a couple of weeks ago. It's marooned in Homestead, Florida. A little single strip airstrip with like one Mexican speaking mechanic on site. So I got to try and figure that out this week, how to get it fixed and back here to Naples.
What happened, Bob?
Fuel system failure at 1,200 feet.
Oh, that'll wake you up.
Yeah, that was what you call a sphincter clencher moment.
Oh,
so for those of you that are unfamiliar with aircraft, almost all private or small aircraft have two fuel pumps. They have a mechanical fuel pump and a what they call a boost pump or an electric pump. So when mechanical pump failed, and then I turned my electric pump on, and then it started kicking out. The circuit breaker kept tripping on me. So that was really, really exciting. We were probably 4 miles from the airstrip at 1,200 feet. So it was like push the button and you gain 50 feet of altitude, and then you drop and you keep pushing the button and you gain altitude. But we made it back. It was touch and go, but we did it.
Did you buy for sale signs?
It's a good airplane, except for that minor issue.
Well, best that you learn like that, you know.
Yeah, well, and I was with my instructor. I was doing IFR training at the time, and we were both kind of reminiscing afterwards about how we reacted. You take the first 5 or 10 seconds to kind of gather yourself, assess the situation, and we trained for it, so it's all good. Right, so yeah, that was what was going on. I've been busy. I got 3 builds that'll hopefully be finishing up next week. I've got a one of the German-Tech 214 builds is going to be finishing up. That's a 48 scale model, nice and big. It's going to have a 3.5-inch OTW dive module in it. That's getting trimmed out on Monday or Tuesday. We'll have wet testing done by the end of the week, and then a little 96 USS Nautilus and a 30-second parallel Type 23. And those will all be tested next week if things go well. I have not had a chance to even pick up the new cylinders. Nothing has happened on that front. But as soon as these builds are off, I'm going to focus on getting that knocked out so that we can get, you know, some sub drivers back out into the market again. I wanted to comment on for anybody, has anybody ever bought a secondhand boat from anybody? From me, from another person, as one of your fleet? Steve, Rob?
I had it from you, Bob.
Yeah. So it many times, you know, it kind of feels like you kind of get a deal, right? You know, where typically a build might cost you $3,000 or $4,000 and someone sells their boat for like $2,000 or something like that. You feel like you're getting an awesome deal. What I found with this 214, it was a brand new boat. It was never run, but it was in theory water ready. So this was built by a well-known builder out of California, and he sold it to a gentleman out of Australia. The guy in Australia took a look at it and said, I don't like it. I don't like the quality of the build. Can I trade it to you for a different build? So I took it in. And it's probably taken almost as much time to rework what was done as it would have been to build it again from scratch. So just bear that in mind, that anytime you buy a used boat, the amount of work that it's going to take to get it operational is probably exponentially more than the time that you think it will take. So I'm just going to leave it at that. And you know, for some people, maybe they don't know any different, but even if the boat's fully functional, you know, there'll be things that you want to change, and changing something that's already built is always harder than building it from scratch. So that's all I'll say for that.
I would have preferred to have built a brand new Nautilus, but what I got, I think I got a good deal, and it worked out great.
Oh, hell, there was no other choices, so
There's nothing I could do about it. Yeah. So
do you want to hear a story that'll hurt your heart? So we're talking about the 66-inch Nautilus for everyone, and if you're not familiar with that kit, it's absolutely gorgeous. That's Steve's big. That's what's playing in my background there. That's a CR66 Nautilus. Been out of production for 6 or 8 years. You really can't find them on the market at all. And somebody emailed me and he's like, I see that Nautilus kit in the background of one of your videos. Can I buy it? And it's my personal boat that I'm keeping for like my retirement. I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll sell it for like $10,000. You can have it, but I'm not selling it otherwise because you can't replace it. And a day later, he's like, guess what? At the local university here, I found a built Nautilus, and I asked if I could buy it, and they said, oh yeah, it's been here just sitting on a shelf. You know, give me €100 donation and you can take it. So this guy got a fully built 66-inch Nautilus model for €100. Hurts my heart. I mean, good for him, but it still hurts my heart.
You realize we don't want to hear those type of stories, Bob.
It happens. All right. Well, that's enough from me.
Well, Bob, you know, the Type 9 that I got from you that you did some rebuild on as a result of UPS.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a spectacular boat.
That was originally built by Dwayne Hill. So right off the bat, you've got a talented builder his work that you're basing things off of. So yeah, that is all the difference. And I've seen the full spectrum. I've got one on the shelf right now, that Type 21 that I'm going to be finishing for a customer. That guy spent 3 years just building the cylinder. So, that's one end of the spectrum. And then on the other end, you've got the, watertight cylinder that's waterproofed with gobs full of silicone, around all the joints and seals and the linkages that only kind of turn one way, and you have to wiggle it to make it go the other way. So there is that full spectrum of stuff that you're going to see when you buy these used boats. And actually, that's one of the things that I love most about the regattas. You see the full spectrum, and what's really funny is sometimes the ugliest boats run the best.
I know Nathan's ready to take on anybody with the Thunder Tiger Neptune on the course run next time.
Yeah.
Better watch
So
out.
I bought another one from France. It's on its way here. So I think I might rebody it, or at least paint it again. So there'll be 2 of them.
Sweet.
I
It's
have a
almost
quick,
done.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question actually. So I have some 3D printed parts for my watertight cylinder. The bulkheads are 3D printed. And I was wondering, what do you guys think is the best way to waterproof the prints? Because they're pretty waterproof, but I just don't trust it over time. I'm sure water will seep through. And the bulkheads are hollow. Well, they have some infill, but they're pretty much hollow. So I don't want them to fill up. You know what I mean? And then the water will kind of be trapped in there. So what do you think would be a good thing? Like an epoxy or like a clear coat of something?
Yeah. So first off, yeah, I've printed lots of bulkheads and end caps and everything for watertight cylinders. And there's an argument that PLA plastic is not the best filament to use for prolonged exposure to water. I would argue that in our application, this definition of prolonged doesn't apply. You dunk your boat for 20 minutes, then it comes out and sits on the shelf for a month. So it's really not a problem. It's really not an issue. What is an issue, what I would have recommended, in advance is to print your parts with a 100% infill. In my experience, if you've only got, say, 2 or 3 shells around the perimeter, if your settings aren't right, if you're extruding a little bit cool, you're going to get little fissures in between the layers, and that's where you start seeing the leaks. So I don't know what the design of your end cap looks like, but what you've got to watch obviously is the tolerance between your cap and your tube. So if you put epoxy on it, now all of a sudden you're messing up your tolerances because it's going to fit too tight on the inside diameter.
That shouldn't be a problem. I got one right here, if you can see it.
Yeah. Okay.
I have the O-rings, right? And there's already glue in the inside groove where the O-ring sits to glue the O-ring down. Well, actually, the O-rings aren't glued down. I'm sorry, but I put it in there so it would stick in there. I can get them out, but they'll stick. And then, so I could possibly put the epoxy on the outside.
Yep.
And then I could maybe even very finely, I could, if I wanted to, maybe stick some epoxy or some type of material in here and in between.
So
just kind of seal it up.
Everything from that inside seal out needs to be considered as being exposed to water. Okay. So you're gonna want to coat it with something. Now, I would actually say you'd probably be fine with spray paint. If you were to use, and I would recommend a gloss paint because typically it ends up being a thicker application. But that would create a solid barrier around the entire thing. Epoxy is going to be thick. It'll affect the cosmetics of it.
I see.
But so I would just watch that. I would try paint first, like a nice gloss paint, and I think you'd be
I see.
okay.
So like a spray paint, you're saying, or
Yeah. Yep.
okay, so you like tape off some things and just kind of spray it on there.
If your O-rings are really, really tight, then you're going to need to obviously not get paint in those grooves.
Yeah. Well,
But
also I don't want to get
if
paints on the seals and in the I don't want to get paint in here, you know, on these little holes.
Oh yeah, no, for sure you have to
Yeah.
do some masking, but
Gotta tape
yeah.
them off, yeah.
If I can intersect, here's one that I've done end caps for this one. Oh, I can't hardly. And both sides. And all I did was use a primer coat. I didn't do anything where I had my seals. I just primered the outside edge and just a little of the inside edge and the outside. And then I used, well, it's a semi-gloss black paint,
Mhm.
you know, sanded it down a couple of times, and that's all I've done. And I have not had any leaks whatsoever out of either end of this particular one that I have here.
Okay.
So it's not a, you know, it's not a big deal to go ahead and, you know, just use, like Bob says, I used the, like I say, a primer coat and sanded it several times, got it real smooth. And then I used the semi-gloss black paint is all I've got. I didn't do anything on the interior where the seals are. And I have not had any seepage whatsoever anywhere. And I've had this thing in the water. I put it in the pool one day, weighted it down, let it just sit there for almost an hour, just checking for leaks through this cylinder that I made.
Right.
And I had no problem, no issues at all with it. So
So that I'm understanding you correctly, you are removing the O-rings before you're painting it, correct?
I would recommend it because again, you need to consider that anything up to and including that seal is basically exposed to water. That water is going to flow between the end cap and the tube up to that first O-ring. And if the reason you got two is for redundancy and stability, but if that one leaks, it's going to also go all the way to the second one. So ideally, yeah, you would want to do that, but all depends on the tolerance that you have with the seal and the tube.
Yeah, but
the other thing,
what about those of us that have older cylinders that have just one O-ring?
That's perfectly fine. And you know, honestly, you know, it's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's perfectly fine. Okay. The only thing I'm going to say about that 3D printed, you know, version that is not 100% infill, you're going to be really, really surprised at the amount of force that's exerted on the seal pressing inward, you know, towards the center of your end cap. When you jam that in there, you know, you've got all that force going in, and if you've got, like, again, a 2 or 3 layer shell, you can crack that you know, waterproof shell that you've got going on there.
Right. I didn't print it in 100% because it's kind of thick.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a consideration because I want to make a version, like a second version of my sub driver, because there are some things I've seen that I did that I might want to redo in the future.
Good for you.
Yeah, but it's working out. But there's just some, you know, things I want to change. But I could definitely in the future print them 100%. You know, that's not too crazy.
And you might be okay if you did say like a 5 shell or a 5 layer shell on the outside, but typically the stock settings on your printer are going to be 2. So if you maintain those settings, I'd be really concerned. Maybe not right away, but especially if you store that cylinder with that end cap in, it's just pushing and pushing and pushing, and over time I could see that plastic just needs to move, you know, like a 1/10 of a millimeter. Now you've got an opportunity for that water to get in.
Yeah, it should be, I have more infill than 2. I know I changed it because I was worried about its thinness, but I don't remember what the number is, to be honest, for that.
Understood.
Bob or Mike, I found that mine were all printed at 100%. This one here has got oversized O-rings or larger sized O-rings. I put one on the interior, and then I have one between the cylinder itself and the edge of the cap. But then I used epoxy resin around the outer edge and on the front of the cap itself. And then of course my wiring came through to tie in the battery. So that's another method that worked real well. Even though it fit good, and with that other seal between the cylinder and the cap. And again, I have had no problems, no seepage at all with it. So as far as sealing the PLA, those are the 2 methods I've used: epoxy resin and like Bob suggested, even just a clear coat of paint. Seems to work. And again, 100% on the infill on the printing.
Noted. I will do that.
Yeah, good stuff. And I want to commend you for not taking a look at your cylinder and saying, well, this is just the way it's done. I love people, and I'm one of them that's like, well, that's cool, but man, if I were just to change this, it would be better.
Yep, it's a curse sometimes. But yeah, yep.
And I see, I didn't even notice until now. Warren is on. I know you were struggling with getting on. It's good to see you, Warren. And those 2 boats that I were mentioning before are yours. Both of them are done. Both of them are trimmed, and both of them are ready for the lake next week. So we'll get pictures and video to you. They look pretty darn cool.
Good. It took me 10 minutes or so to get on, so I missed your total introduction. But thanks for the update on.
Yep, absolutely. I don't know if you mentioned, so again, for you guys too, because I'm such a addicted to flying right now. I wanted to fly these planes up to Warren, but with my broke ass plane right now, it'll get fixed. But if you're in a super rush, we would need to ship it. But if you can wait a little bit, I'll fix my plane and we'll get it up to you.
As mentioned before, I'm in no rush at all. I have tons of work here to do. Matter of fact, over 10 years of work that I'm trying to work down. So no, I'm not in a rush. Take care.
Okay, all right, good stuff. Hey, Steve, for everybody here who hasn't seen it, you should walk them through your Columbia in the background there a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, it's my very first attempt at trying to design something in a CAD system, other than just small parts and pieces. So, trying to design an entire submarine is a little more involved, obviously. Trying to learn Fusion 360, which is what I designed it in. I had some help from Randy, I believe it's Snyder out of Canada.
Randy Sanders,
sorry, who helped me with some sticking points, which were many. And at times it was very frustrating, but he was very patient and helped me to get through things. And what I did was, during my Christmas break, I sat down at my computer and forced myself to do this. And I just kept slogging away at it until I had learned lofting with rails and different things like that to try to be able to come up with this. Now, I did this to suit my needs, the way I plan to print it. Now, this model is modeled as a solid model for all intents purposes, with the exception of a few parts. And then what I did was I sliced it into sections, the length of the boat. There's 11 sections to the hull. And when I laid those on my print surface, I only printed the outside 6 shells, 6 perimeters, making it about 2.5 millimeters thick all the way around. So it ended up printing a hollow tube, okay, which I then glued together with flange strips that I attached, and I just built one piece onto the next until I had it completely built out. I then split the hull down the sides with a razor saw. So 2 straight cuts down the sides to be able to separate the top from the bottom. And I've since added formers, bulkheads, whatever needed to be done. You know, push rod control arms, everything that were needed. I even did the photonics masts for it. I designed those down and built those at the scale I needed to put them on and so forth. And it's turned out really well so far. Now, it's a little unconventional how the top and the bottom fit together, in that I have kind of a keyed flange that fits over the head of some Allen screws in one half of the hull. So once you slide it together about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, you lock it together, the top and the bottom become very solid, and it's very strong. It can be a little tricky to try to get the two to line up or to come apart, but it does do it, no problem. And I can deal with that. But, you know, this is all conceptual because Columbia is only now being begun. So it's based on images I found on the internet, some different ones to support some of the features of it that I incorporated into it. But it's using the Hydra G2 Hydra 50 motor ESC combination in the wet with a watertight box and 240 millimeter spheres for ballast tanks that are vented by solenoids. They're essentially the same solenoids that come out of Keurig coffee makers. They run on 12 volts and they've worked very good in my Nautilus. That's what I had in it. So I've got servos in the wet in the sail and the 2 in the back that control the dive planes. And what I'm doing is I'm incorporating V-tail mixer from Bob in the watertight box, and I'll have separate outputs in the watertight box for if I run that box in this sub for the V-tail connections versus say that Ohio that's behind it. So it's the same box that goes in either boat. Same power system, the motor and the ESC combination that go in either boat. So very modular in its construction on the inside. I've got 2 5 amp hour 12 volt SLAs that go in the Ohio. So I figured 10,000 milliamps of power. It's pretty good. Should work pretty well. The propulsor is all completely 3D designed. After 2 cracks at it, I came up with the design I did. We're going to find out how it works, but this boat is almost ready to go. I've got lights on it. I just have to rig up the power harness and then integrate a light controller, the V-tail mixer, and I think a pitch controller inside the watertight box. And then I'm also looking at building or designing and printing thrust, bow thruster and a stern thruster for it. So I've got the speed controllers for those motors ordered, and it's going to run on 2.4 gigahertz.
Hey,
Nice.
Steve, I got a question.
Yeah.
Again, what are you using those Keurig solenoids exactly for again?
The venting of the ballast tanks.
Oh, the venting. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody know what pressure rating they're at? I mean, for venting the tanks, it's wouldn't have to be that much. I'm just curious if anybody ever took time to see what you could pump the pressure up and see what they'll handle.
I'd imagine it's quite a bit. I don't know that specific one, but with all the electronic solenoids that I've used in the past, like typically they're going to be rated to like 100 psi minimum, typically, which is more than enough for our application. You know, I think, and Merriman would know this offhand, but like, you know, our little propel canisters, if those get heated, they'll typically get up to maybe around 80. So that's, you know, you still got a pretty decent safety margin in there.
Right. I'm in the application I'm looking at is to launch those faux tomahawks using a CO2. I have a CO2 cartridge holder with a regulator used for paintball guns. Now I think it runs about 125. I don't know. I got to take a look at some. I'm just trying to find a good 12-volt solenoid that I know is rated at least at 125.
But you're launching the missiles. Couldn't you just use the trigger mechanism from an actual paint gun?
Probably, I'm looking to do it electronically. If I don't know the parts of a paint gun. I bought this thing off Shoe Bar decades ago, so I don't know what trigger, if it's mechanical or I'd rather electronic launch for, you know.
Because I'd like to hook up with you sometime, because I've got that big Gato that I've got sitting on my bench that I'll be working on this fall. But because it's so big, it has 2 4-liter ballast tanks. I want to use CO2 rather than, you know, gas, because that's going to get pretty expensive. So I'm going to need to go down the CO2 route. So I'm going to need to regulate the onboard pressure, or sorry, like the canister pressure down to something more like 80 psi, but then figure out an electronic release method to differentially, you know, vent CO2 into each one of those tanks.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's collaborate on that. It'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Bob, I've got another question for the group. I'm in the process of possibly doing the Type 21 that you have.
Yeah.
Printed. I've got the one piece that you've had on the site that we could download. And my question is, it's got that beautiful etched brass, and I don't know what the rest of you guys do with etched brass. Can you just leave it that without putting the paint on? It seems to me to have that beautiful brass on there, to put paint on it, it kind of detracts. Maybe that's just me.
This is 100% a matter of personal preference. So if you think it looks cool with bright brass highlights, you know, everywhere, more power to you. I always tell people there is no wrong way to paint your boat if you like how it looks. And screw everybody if they don't like it or they tell you it's not accurate. You know, it's if people like fresh from the dry dock, I personally don't. Good for you. If it's all rusty and looks like it went through World War III and you like that, perfect. You know, it's not their boat, it's your boat. So but to your point, obviously the Type 21s, those brass photo etch pieces represent sections of the hull that were literally torched out to make holes. So they don't have brass plating, you know, around all the scuppers and vents and all of that stuff. So it would all be the lovely shade of gray. To answer your question in terms of accuracy, that's what it would be. And for those of you who didn't haven't picked up on it in previous DiveTribe, photo etch parts can be tricky to adhere and they can be tricky to paint. The trick to them is to pickle it in acid, and I'm trying to remember, perchloric acid is what you want, and you basically dip or brush the part in perchloric acid, and what that does is it micro etches the surface, so it turns from the aforementioned beautiful shiny glossy brass into like a dull gray finish, and that's basically the result of millions of micro fissures in the surface. So now you can glue it down and it'll stick to whatever you glue it to, and you can paint it and the paint will stick to it. If you don't properly prep your brass parts, if you just take your fingernail and rub, 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 off comes your beautiful paint job. So
Doesn't
For chlor-
vinegar work too, Bob?
what's that?
Doesn't vinegar work too?
It does, but not vinegar is obviously a low acidity. The perchloric is a little more heavy duty. It'll get the job done a little faster.
Yeah.
But you could literally just dump it into a glass of vinegar, yeah, for sure, and just leave it there for a while.
Is that like an etching solution?
Yeah, yep.
Making circuit boards?
I don't know that. I've never made a circuit board. I couldn't tell you.
Perchloric acid. Okay.
Perchloric acid, yeah, it's cheap. I think I got a big like 16-ounce jug for like $5 or something.
What color is it?
Clear.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. That's how you prep photo etch. So Rob, do whatever turns your crank, but on the back side, either fine sandpaper or perchloric acid to glue it to the hull.
Those
Okay.
circuit boards use formic acid.
That's right. That's right. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Do you guys mind if I have another
Careful when
question?
doing your pickling is to don't put it in too long, because some of your tight tolerance holes will get larger and then things don't fit.
Yep, good point. What was that, Michael?
So I have this micro servo and it makes a weird noise. It's making a weird noise now. 1 second. So I don't know if you can hear this. Can you guys hear that?
No.
No? Dang. Can you hear it now?
No.
Dang, okay. Whatever. So the servo makes a weird clicking sound. I'll show you what it's doing. Kind of reverse like that there. So the servo is holding this rod through the bulkhead and it has a seal around it. And it's kind of like making a weird, like very fast kind of electrical clicking sound. And I think it's trying to like pull, but it's like not pulling a lot, and it actuates. And when it's fully extended, it's making a higher pitched sound. Now, should it be making any sound? I know the bigger ones, they don't make a sound. Now it's not making a
High
sound.
quality servo there, I don't think.
What was that, Steve?
Right.
I don't think that's considered to be a very high quality servo. I know I've had those too, and they make all kinds of noise and they work just
Oh, they
fine.
do. Okay.
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's common. If you've got good throw and if you've got good torque, I wouldn't worry, too much about it. If this is going to be your, work of art that you're building, if you spend a couple bucks more, you can get like a Metal Gear servo. That'll probably work out, really good for you. And the good news is it's a standard size. I know those servos well. It's the kind that Dave's been putting in his cylinders for like forever.
Yeah. Well, I got the servo from you actually, Bob.
Yeah, we need to go through all
servo.
of them before we ship them out, because about 1 out of every 20 is dead on arrival. You got to throw it in the garbage.
I see. So one last question about the micro servo. So I got this little spike in here, and what it does is that seals, right? And that's a pressure release valve. So it's a dynamic diver. So the water comes up, rises into the ballast tank. The ballast tank's on this side.
Yep.
And so that water, the air, when this opens, it's not glued in, of course, but when that opens, the air is allowed to escape through a tube out the submarine.
Okay.
And my worry is if this servo is constantly working, it's not working that hard, but if it's working, will it burn itself out? Or can it just hold it there? Is that fine?
It's not ideal, and
Right.
eventually it will burn itself out. But what I'd be more concerned about is potentially current draw, because when an electric motor goes into a state of stall, the current consumption goes up exponentially. So even a standard servo, as tiny as that is, I believe in full stall they pull almost 4 amps. So
I
that
see.
can kill, your battery pretty quickly. So I would just kind of keep that, in mind. Something that you might consider is rather than the actual servo arm itself pulling against that face, if you were to put a spring on there so that it pushes a certain way and then it opens the hole, and then it releases and then it seats, and then it's actually the spring that's putting the tension on, that might work a little bit better.
Could he have
Yeah.
a problem with his trim? The end points?
I think he said it's
Well-
even in the neutral point that it's making the funny noises.
It is. Well, see, like it's making the noise now, and I gotta kind of move it. It's not that tight though. That's what I don't understand. So it's like it's
Oh, that's
almost the neutral.
It's so if you move that arm just a little bit, it goes
It
away.
stops. Yeah.
So all that is the servo is pulling against the tension in your seal. So it's just pulling a little bit. It's working a little bit to pull the bar back to what it
Yeah.
considers to be that neutral position. That seal's just it's got a little bit of clamping force on that linkage rod. So that's all it is.
It's
I
not a
don't
big
think your
deal.
servo's broken or anything like that, but I
Okay.
would consider making that seal spring loaded, and then all the servo does is it pushes on the end and opens it up. And then that way in neutral, the servo's not doing anything. It's not touching anything. It's not, attached to anything. But at the end, it pushes that rod and opens up the valve.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Might try to do something like that then.
And if you
Okay.
if you were to use, say, like 2 wheel collars and a spring on the middle, you could adjust the tension on that spring.
I see. So like a rod, two plate collars on the rod, and in between those, a spring around the rod in a sense.
You'd want to put it on the inside. If it's a compressive spring, you'd want to put it on the inside of your cylinder, so that the one edge of the spring rests against your bulkhead, the other end rests against the wheel collar. So when that spring is pushing, it's sealing against the side, and then when the servo pushes the other end, it opens up and compresses the spring.
Okay, I'll look into that. Thanks.
That is very similar to the vent that I believe Dwayne Hill and Greg Sharp used. It was just basically a little spring-loaded vent, and then the servo arm just flips up and pushes the spring-loaded arm up.
Okay, that makes sense.
Nice. I want to show you guys this because I'm really super excited about it. I'm getting really close. What's going on here? There we go. To my book. It's almost done. And I found a publishing partner. And the cool thing is, the book is going to be available in like full-size paperback version, as well as digital version, as well as Kindle version. And it'll be available at like Barnes & Noble and Amazon and like all of these different platforms, as well as through my site. And I'll have hard copies like if we go out to events and that kind of thing. But the scope keeps climbing. This is the table of contents. This is all the topics that are covered in the book. And don't expect like, a Bible on each chapter. I'm sure everybody's going to be like, well, how do you do it? This is like an overview for beginners. This is your kind of your first exposure to the hobby. But it ended up being, I think, 170 full color pages, 180. So it's pretty sizable. It's taken me quite a while to put together, but we'll see a few of your subs in there. Ed, your boat's in there. Steve, yours is there. You might recognize that fine rear end of a boat. Hopefully it's okay. I used your picture.
Eddie
Yeah.
Happy.
Sweet.
So yeah,
Eddie
look for
Light.
that. I'm not sure about the timing. I have to submit the files, and then part of the service is they've got professional editors that, you know, let me know what needs to get changed and what they would recommend and all of that kind of stuff. So
You know, Bob, I do have to ask, you know, oh, look, there's Bald Head. There at the events calendar at the site, apparently my took is an event. You know, the one picture there, me bending over. You
Oh,
got
yeah,
my
yeah.
best side. I like that.
yeah, I made some changes to the site, and I'm going to continue to make some changes to the site as things go. And again, you know, my website provider, apparently I've done enough business now that they're like, oh, this guy might actually be worth investing some time in, and they hooked me up with a personal like advisor to help me with my site. So they made a few suggestions, and they've got way more coming.
So Bob, you will have hard copies of that book?
Correct. Yep, 180 this size. Oh, you can't see it. There we go.
Okay, great.
180 pages. Yeah, we need toilet reading material. Apparently, that was the big argument against the subcommittee report going digital, is nobody had anything to read in the bathroom anymore.
So personalized copies for all DiveTribe members, Bob?
I could do that. We could do some signed copies. Yeah, sure.
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
I got some more things I've done.
Let's see.
I'm putting it on right now. Well, some lights. Hold on, I forgot to do this. Oh, there we go. Nope. There we go. I'm not getting anything.
It looks
Broken. It's always the way it works. It never works when you want it to.
Thanks for sharing.
It worked.
Oh,
Then we got that. And then we got this.
oh, the lights underneath. I see some lights underneath.
Yeah, that's probably from the here, let me get my crap together here. There we go. Now we're all set. So we got the lights in there. And then we have this.
Oh, shutters.
Wow.
Wow.
That's cool.
I dubbed the monster view.
Wow.
You're clearly over the top.
Oh,
That
yeah.
is so cool.
What do you do in your free time?
So I'm gonna make a statement here. When you're close to being done, you let me know, and I'm gonna come up and we'll make a video together of this boat. You know, we need to make sure that we do a good job for the world to see this.
Islip Airport, Bob, ISPs, where you probably fly in. It's right next to the lake.
Okay.
I'm trying to get one. Something's not. Let me turn this thing on. This
Got
is just
too many
when you
buttons on that.
you bring your car to the mechanic. And it works fine. Mine's the opposite. Okay, here we go. That's the engines.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Some reason it. Okay, hit. I want to check my. But I have to turn on my
Oh,
radio
yeah.
and check stuff. So this is what I wanted to show you, how I did my radio. I don't know if you can see, but it sits in a tube that goes up into the conning tower. And even if it leaks, it's like a bell jar thing. And then this
Oh,
is
yeah,
the
yeah, sure.
this is the box that does the standby. And I don't know if you can see, but it says the voltage in each battery pack, because there's the left and a right. So the starboard is in green and the port is in red. And I wish the rest of the stuff would have worked, but these are the missile tubes back here.
Look at this.
I sense an engineering award coming up.
Yeah.
We call it the I ain't got time, but for this engineering award.
God, the Lazar Kurzman of the US.
I don't know why this didn't. I had another. Something has gone askew here.
It always does.
But anyway, also another thing I did, if you can see, I found these push buttons, and they're IP68, and they look just like a hatch. So when I'm done with it, to do the put it on power up, you just push it in, and it'll look like the hatch once it's painted. So I'll put the
Nice.
spring on it, the handles, and like
Don't
I said,
paint that, it's so nice and shiny.
yeah, but the Sea-View doesn't have that. Be real.
The Sea-View didn't even exist, so what are you talking about?
You can do what you want, Frank.
It does in my head. Then we have these work too. We're getting there.
So
How
the
much longer?
ETA, like next week, you'll be all done?
Yeah, right. Well, I was a lot further than I thought, but now everything is going. Something's going on. But
Well, you've got
I
you
figure
have
in
a
about
hard,
3
you have
weeks
a
it'll be-
hard deadline of September. So everything's
Yeah.
got to be done, and we got to see it down in Georgia.
I
All
hope.
my stuff's going into the garbage cans now.
Yeah, I feel that.
Well, the big thing is, will it come off the bottom?
Voyage to the
All right.
bottom.
Well, tell you what, guys, I have a hard stop because we need to get set for the subcommittee executive team meeting, which again, if you are just signing in, if you look in your chat, in theory, you should see the link if you wanted to join us. I don't know how it works. If you weren't here, there, I just did it again. I'll be starting that in the next couple of minutes. If you're interested at all in seeing what the subcommittee has coming down the tubes in this coming year, by all means, check in. So I'm going to take off, and I know Ed needs to take off, which means I need to hand over the meeting to somebody. Steve, are you coming over to subcommittee? You're going to hang out here?
I probably come over, yeah.
Okay, who's not? Who is willing to take the mantle of somebody needs to be put in charge, basically, which just anybody gonna raise your hand?
I'm going to slide over to the meeting.
Okay, all right.
I think you're getting all,
Michael, did you wave your hand or were you adjusting your camera?
I think you're getting all of us in that next meeting.
Okay, all right. Well, you know what? If that's the case, we'll just end it here, and we can queue up anything that we didn't have for next time.
Okay.
All right, guys, appreciate it. That's good stuff.
Thanks,
Okay.
Look
Bob.
forward to seeing you here in a
Thanks,
few
Bob.
minutes.
Bye-bye.